So Stephan, you've watched the scene of heart and lung transplantation for many years. So tell us a little bit about how you got involved in heart transplantation.
When I decided to get into surgery, I was looking for the best possible training place in Germany. And this was, at the time, this was Hanover Medical School. So I applied, and Hans Borst, who was my former chief, interviewed me, and my career plan before that wasn't very straightforward, so I wasn't quite clear which way to go, and I had my doubts in this interview, but he still picked me because I had done some basic research already, animal research before, which he was very interested in esophageal surgery. So he picked me, and I started working under his leadership in Hanover. And after a few years, there was the plan to start a transplant program, which was at that time was the second in Germany. There was one in Munich, and there was this one in Hanover. And Roland Hetzer, who was attending in Hanover Medical School, he had part of his training in San Francisco. He worked with Don Hill in the Pacific Medical Center and at Stanford. So he came back and he was designated to start the transplant program. I was a very junior surgeon. Obviously, I was absolutely excited about it, and very quickly got into the skills of retrievals, doing biopsies, etc. And we obviously, at those days, we didn't have any support system, so we were basically three of us. And Roland did most of the operations, and we went out for retrievals and did the surrounding stuff needed. And I had to go through my rotational training in other departments, trauma surgery, general surgery, and I had to still carry on with my responsibility for the transplant patients. And then, so this worked out like I came in 6 o'clock in the morning. I convinced the operating staff that we do the biopsies before I actually went to my trauma meeting, doing the trauma cases after that. So it was a bit of a muddling through time, but it was very exciting, and within a very short period of time, we were one of the biggest transplant centers in Europe. After that, we obviously moved to Berlin, and I was a member of this very small team when we started the German Heart Institute in Berlin, which again was exciting because there was no high-profile medicine in Berlin at the time. It was West Berlin, still surrounded by the wall, and we very shortly wanted to establish a transplant program. There was a competing cardiac unit, very much involved in the total artificial heart development, but they haven't done any transplants at the time. So on the other hand, there was the East German part. There was this famous hospital, Charité, on the other side of the wall, and they were also wanting to do the first heart. And there was a competition who would do the first heart transplant, whether it would be the West or the East. And I remember very well, reports came to us later on that the East German, the Communist Party, had decided that the Charité was supposed to do the first heart transplant earlier than we did, but obviously we did the first one. So the German Heart Institute then carried on building the biggest heart transplant program in Europe. We did more than 100 hearts per year, and we very shortly after that got into mechanical circulatory support. We were the first ones using the Berlin heart, which was developed in Berlin, and in fact the research labs where it was developed was part of our university. So it basically came out where we worked, and with this Berlin heart. And I remember very well the first application took place in 1987, the first case. I was a young assistant, and the patient got successfully transplanted a month or so later. So that was all very exciting. So,
do you remember the first heart transplant that you performed?
I did. I remember that very well. That was in Berlin, obviously.
What year was that?
I think it probably was sometimes 1987, 88, something like that.
Tell us about that first heart transplant.
Well, you know, I was constantly involved in retrievals and assisting, so it wasn't that big of a step for me. And in those days, we all did so many heart transplants that it was basically, we did more heart transplants than other cardiac surgical procedures almost. And this was very exciting, and obviously it completely changed my life. My life was around transplantation from the very early beginning of my surgical training. And then I decided obviously to move on and do other things and also do research. That was the reason why I went to the US.
So tell us about your experiences in the United States.
I was very friendly with Bruce Reitz and Bill Baumgartner. And I was excited to see them coming to Baltimore and being in charge of the division at Hopkins. And I was very interested from the beginning of my research activities in lung preservation. And this was the time when it was very sort of fashionable to look into reperfusion injury. And Hopkins, they had a very strong track record on looking into oxygen-free radicals and their role in the reperfusion injury and role of leukocytes, and not only in cardiac surgery, but also in general surgery. There was a strong research department, and Bruce offered me kindly enough to come over for 2 years, and that's what I did. And Hopkins was quite an exciting experience for me because the American medicine was so different from Europe, not only in terms of the way things were practiced, but also the training was fantastic. They had an incredible training program which didn't exist in Germany. In Germany, it was very unstructured and very hierarchical, whereas in the US, my experience was it was very collegial, and you were exposed to real proper training, and the senior surgeons almost assist in most transplants cases and standard cardiac cases. So it was quite a nice experience. And obviously the quality of research, the way the whole academic side of things was organized, was fascinating to me. And there's one thing which still was extremely important to me, to meet a guy called Leon Schlossberg, who used to be a medical illustrator, and he was probably the most prominent person in this field in the whole world at the time. And most textbooks you and I are reading and papers published coming out of Hopkins and elsewhere were illustrated by Leon Schlossberg. And I had designed my own animal model, large animal model, 24-hour lung preservation with leukocyte filtration, etc. And this very famous guy came to my lab and took drawings, and I still have them until today, about my double lung transplantation. They're in my office, and he showed me his collection. He was an amazing character and fascinating memory.
So let's talk about ISHLT. Tell us about your first introduction and experiences at ISHLT.
This was when I was in Hanover still. I had my first paper, and I just had managed to develop a small animal research model, again on lung ischemia and the consequences of lung ischemia, a little rabbit model. And I was so proud that this paper was accepted. And in those days, obviously, we didn't have any PowerPoint presentation, so we had to develop all the slides. And these were black and white slides, and they were colored with little pens, and we were sitting anxiously making sure there were no grammar errors, spelling errors, and we practiced like crazy at home. And the meeting was in New York. And I remember very well in the session, the chairman was Stuart Jamieson and Denton Cooley. And the presentation went well, but I was totally scared to death. So I had written down the whole presentation, and I was reading it from my manuscript just to make sure not to make any mistakes. And because I was so nervous, I skipped the most important slide. I pressed the button twice, so I was kind of, the most important result slide was gone. And I was kind of always behind the first presentation, and it was a bit of a disaster, but I got over it, and I was very gently reminded by the chairman that this was obviously a mistake, but I learned from that, and my English has slightly improved since then. And yeah, it was very impressive, but it was an incredible experience to be part of this, at this time, very smallish group.
So there are a lot of societies available to cardiothoracic surgeons. Why was it that you put so much energy into ISHLT?
Well, first of all, transplantation was basically the main driving force in my career, not just as a cardiac surgeon practically, but also scientifically. And obviously this was my home. And the society gave so much back to me. So I always thought that I feel obliged to serve the society, because I got so much joy out of what I learned from other people, from particularly my American friends, but also from the international community, which grew over time, that I could never stop being part of this. And I have to say that this society offered me the unique opportunity also to make a difference myself. Not just being part of a group and paying membership fee, but there were so many opportunities from the beginning. Obviously, I'm a member of other societies as well, but nowhere is it such an atmosphere as within ISHLT. And obviously, we've, since then we made so much progress. I was program chair, and in London in 1997 when Bill Baumgartner was president, which was a great, fantastic experience for the first time. In those days, there was the international component of it was still fairly small, and it was exciting to have the meeting in London.
So, your presidency.
Yes.
So you were president in 2002?
Yes.
So during that time in the society, I recall that there were some problems with the society, that it was being challenged, that there were some people worrying that the science and even some of the individuals were being drawn to other societies, particularly in the United States, other transplant societies. Tell us a little bit about your presidency and the challenges you had and how you faced this particular issue.
Yes. Well, I think one issue is that there is always this criticism that from some of the outside of US members, there was not enough representation in the society. And we had a big debate about it over years, whether this sort of balance between US and non-US was justified. And we took a pragmatic approach. Number one, we looked at the membership, and the membership clearly said that 2/3 of the membership comes from the US, 1/3 is non-US European. And we always tried to find the right balance. And just for me in person, I was a non-US person. I was elected. I had the confidence given to me from the membership, which is 2/3 of US members. And I think over time this problem has become smaller. I think there was other problems, I think, which were more important to us. And for example, during my presidency, I introduced one of the new councils, the ID Council, which has a huge importance these days. And I think the introduction of these sort of sub-working groups within the society had made a huge difference for our development, and also has given a lot of members, non-US members, opportunities to make an impact in the society. I never, because I never tried to get involved in this discussion about representation, whether you're from this country or from that country. I was always regarded myself as an international character. I don't feel that I'm European, that I'm in the UK, German. I think the identity is fine, but I think at the end of the day, we are scientists, we're surgeons, nurses, cardiologists, and I think that has to be the main theme for all of us we have to work under.
So coupled with the challenges of internationality is the reality that in transplantation and even mechanical support, it's a multidisciplinary activity. And of course that characterizes the ISHLT. So how do we deal with that challenge of keeping all of these disparate groups interested in ISHLT because of they're also allegiance to a number of other societies. What's special about ISHLT for them?
I think you won't find in whole medicine, you won't find a society where you have such a diverse group of people meeting for a few days and exchanging all the latest science and discussing strategies, best practice, outcomes, etc. Whereas in this society, you have groups of basic scientists, pathologists, microbiologists, surgeons working together on one specific topic. And the best indicator for this is the consensus papers we have developed, the best practice papers. We have introduced into the literature papers on myocardial rejection. We have international working groups. And I think there is no other society in medicine where this is happening. And I think that's what people want to preserve. And that's what makes people coming back. And I think this is our legacy.
So the society does seem to be getting bigger. What changes have occurred in the society to facilitate this notion that you're articulating? There have been some changes over the years, and young people seem more involved. What do you think has changed that's been so attractive to them?
I think we offer more today. Obviously, we learned how to educate. We introduced new media, how to communicate what we have developed. We are broader, we are more open. It was a small club when we started in 1984, when I was the first time at the meeting in 1984, and I remember this was, it was almost like a club. So a few people were running the show and there was not much else happening. Whereas now it's a big society with hundreds of subgroups and committees, and still the structure, if you look at it, is fairly simple. It's fairly simple, and there's transparency, and there's, information gets from top to bottom and in return. And I think this kind of atmosphere, and particularly if you look at the meetings, the way we communicate with each other is friendly, is collegial, is not intimidating. There is nothing intimidating in this society. Everybody is approachable. Now I think this makes a lot of difference as compared to other societies.
Are there challenges to the ISHLT in its current form? Things that we need to be aware of?
I think obviously transplantation is in itself, it's a challenge. We have seen decline in organ donation in many countries, particularly in heart transplantation, which is a big challenge. But again, this has opened new doors for the increase of other technology. Mechanical circulatory support has found its home in ISHLT. We have numerous specialties around MCS now coming into ISHLT. There is an increasing number of centers which are not involved in heart transplantation whatsoever. They only do MCS. So this is a new group of people, specialists, who all have decided to join ISHLT. So I think these are the challenges, the changes in medicine. I think these are the challenges. I think organizational-wise and structurally-wise, financially, I don't think we have any problems. I think the problems come from medicine itself. Reimbursement systems are different, more tricky sometimes. There are restrictions in some countries to apply medicine, to do things according to best practice rules. I think this is what we have to face. And obviously we have to, I think this is one thing we have learned, particularly in the last decade, I would say, we have to help certain parts of the world to apply the medicine we have developed over the last 20 years.
What about the role of ISHLT on an international level among countries that are relatively underdeveloped from a medical sense, certainly for treatments for advanced heart failure? What's the opportunity for us there?
Well, we have already taken on this opportunity. For example, we had meetings last year in Turkey. Our academy reached out to Turkey, and we had a fantastic meeting there with all the new centers who were very much involved in mechanical circulatory support. I think this is to be continued. We need to do more of that, and we have already plans for reaching out to South America. We have started a while ago establishing an national database which goes back to the database we started at the beginning of ISHLT for heart and lung transplantation. Now we have a database for mechanical circulatory support, which is owned by ISHLT. It's a huge opportunity for international centers to get involved. And then obviously all these teaching opportunities we have awards, we have travel fellowships, all these kind of things. They might add a little bit, but at the end they will lead to the development in those countries. And just to give an example, I have a good relationship to a surgeon in Kazakhstan who has done 80 LVAD implants within 1 year just from scratch. And I think if we reach out and those people join ISHLT, this will be a huge sort of enhancement of our activity.
So you talk about mechanical support. So what do you tell the young surgeon from the United States or elsewhere who's not really interested in transplantation, who's just interested in mechanical support? How do you convince him to come to our society when mechanical support's not even in our name?
I think the name is not necessarily the key to this. And, you know, from the beginning, we wanted to change the name several times. It never has happened because we all felt the name was appropriate. As in other societies, you have societies who have names which do not include everything they do. So the name is an umbrella, and obviously mechanical circulatory support is an area where there will be a lot of development over the last decade. And maybe heart transplantation will become a niche product. And this young surgeon will automatically learn by recognizing how much opportunities we offer in terms of learning, that this is his home. And I think the activity we are offering, I think, speaks for itself. I think most surgeons will understand that this is the place to be. On the other hand, we are able to attract other specialties which in the past haven't necessarily linked with ISHLT, like cardiologists or people not necessarily involved in transplantation, where now they're coming to us and they are interested. So I think it's a process, it's an evolution. It doesn't happen overnight, and surgeons, they will go there where they get the best education, where they get the best opportunity for exchanging their ideas, where they have the best chance to publish their data. This is clearly ISHLT, with the journal being one of the most successful journals in our field, with an impact factor above 5 now. So this is all fantastic development, and I think that's all a surgeon needs to understand, and then they will come to us.
So let's talk for a moment about the future of ISHLT. With all the challenges of the economic reduction in support of surgeons to go to multiple meetings, of cardiologists to go to multiple meetings, of all of these other specialists who spend a part of their time in ISHLT and transplantation, what do you see as the future for ISHLT? Is it secure?
I think it is definitely secure because, we are, again, coming back to the medical aspect of it, we are dealing with patients with end-stage heart and lung failure. So this is the target population of patients we're looking at. And these patients will always be there. And end-stage heart and lung failure will always be an entity in medicine. So as long as we can address this, and as long as we sort of progress in the development of technology and knowledge and understanding of rejection, and if we also manage to identify the best patient and their best possible treatment, I think we will be always ahead of the game. I think the international aspect of this is crucially important, because you will not survive these days if you don't preserve this international aspect. And I think that has to be sent out, this signal has to be sent out again and again to all the members, that this is absolutely crucial. There has to be respect, there has to be mutual respect across borders, across continents, and I think this is vital for our survival. I think financially we'll have no problems, because this is it's a growing field, end-stage heart and lung disease treatment. So I can see rather the other societies suffering because we offer a very comprehensive package. Other societies are very more, kind of more selective. I think we have pretty comprehensive offers in all areas of end-stage heart and lung disease. So I think, to answer your question, I think the future will be fine. I don't think there is any serious problem. I think we will struggle a little bit with new organizational challenges. Money issues might be a problem. Reimbursement issues, we will have to find solutions so that our patients will have enough access to care. But I think, again, I don't think this has been much better in the past. There have been times when there was no funding and people had to take funding for a heart transplant out of money they could generate outside of the usual channels. So I think it'll be the same.
Stephan, it's been a tremendous pleasure to talk with you about the unique history of ISHLT and your very, very important contributions, both as president and all the ways that you've contributed to the society since that time. And so we thank you for your ongoing commitment and involvement, and we share your excitement for its future.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Jim. Thank you.